Welcome to History What If, where we question the events that already happened. What really could have happened? Could we have changed the outcome? Before we begin, everything you're about to hear is based on historical research, facts, and records. The what-if scenarios are my own opinion and interpretation of events, designed to make you think, question, and explore history differently. This is not the official historical record. This is history, through a different lens. Today's question: what if the little guys, regular people in their pajamas, posting memes on the internet, took on the richest, most powerful funds on Wall Street in a head-to-head money fight? Who wins? Spoiler, it's not who you'd think. Let's go. Picture it, January 2021. Most of the world is stuck inside, bored, scrolling on their phones, and on one corner of the internet, a Reddit forum with a name we'll politely call Wall Street Bets, a bunch of amateur investors noticed something very, very interesting. Something the big Wall Street pros thought nobody would catch. Here's what they noticed. There's this struggling store called GameStop. You know, the place at the mall where you sold your old video games for like 80 cents. The big Wall Street hedge funds were so sure GameStop was going to die that they made a giant bet against it. A bet worth billions. And that bet had a fatal weakness. To make their bet against GameStop, the hedge funds did something called shorting. Don't worry, I'll explain it simply in a second. But here's all you need to know right now. Shorting can make you a fortune if the stock falls. But if the stock goes up instead, you can lose unlimited money, infinite losses. And the internet just found the trap door. So the Redditors realized, if we all buy GameStop stock at the same time, the price goes up and the hedge funds who bet against it get absolutely crushed. One regular person doing this? Pointless. But millions of regular people doing it together? That's an army. And that army just loaded up. So grab your meme stocks and your diamond hands. We're pulling the thread on the most insane David-versus-Goliath money fight in modern history. Okay, let's make the stock market make sense, fast and painless. Normally, you buy a stock hoping it goes up so you can sell it for more later. Buy low, sell high. Simple. That's how normal people invest. But Wall Street has a sneakier move, a way to make money when a stock goes down. And that move is the whole key to this story. Here's shorting explained like you're 5. Imagine you borrow your friend's bike, sell it for $100, and promise to give the bike back later. You're betting the bike's price will drop so you can re-buy it for $60, return it, and pocket the $40 difference. That's shorting. You make money when the price falls. But here's the catastrophic catch. What if you sell the borrowed bike for $100 and then the price of bikes goes up instead? Now you have to buy that bike back to return it, but it costs $500, then $1,000, then $5,000. There's no limit to how high it can go, which means there's no limit to how much you can lose. Shorting is the only bet where you can lose more than everything. Now back to GameStop. The hedge funds had shorted so much GameStop stock that they'd actually bet against more shares than even existed. They were that confident it would die. And that is the flaw the Redditors spotted. If the stock went up, these guys would be forced to buy it back at any price, pushing the price even higher, a trap of their own making. This is called a short squeeze. When a heavily shorted stock starts rising, the people who shorted it panic and rush to buy it back to limit their losses. But all that buying pushes the price even higher, which makes more of them panic buy, which pushes it higher still. It's a feedback loop of pure pain, and the Redditors were about to light the match. So we've got the setup: arrogant hedge funds with a reckless, overextended bet, a forgotten little video game store, and an internet army that just figured out the math. Everything is in place for one of the greatest underdog upsets ever. All it needed was a spark, and the spark was a single word: buy. So let's grant the wish and light the fuse. What happens when millions of regular people armed with phones and memes and a tiny bit of stock market knowledge decide all at once to take on the most powerful financial institutions on Earth? Let's find out. January 2021. It starts. Redditors begin buying GameStop stock by the thousands, then the hundreds of thousands. The price, which had been a sleepy few dollars, starts climbing. $5, $10, $20. The hedge funds aren't worried yet. They think it's a joke. That was their second mistake. Then it goes parabolic. $40, $100, $200, $300. In a matter of days, GameStop, the dying mall store, became one of the most valuable and talked about companies on Earth. The stock went up over 1,700%. The internet army wasn't joking, and now the hedge funds were bleeding billions. The short squeeze had triggered. The hedge funds who bet against GameStop were now forced to buy it back to stop their losses at insane prices, which pushed the price even higher, which hurt them even more. The trap had snapped shut. One major hedge fund reportedly lost billions and had to be bailed out. The little guys were winning, actually winning. And this became about way more than money. It became a movement. Regular people who'd watched Wall Street get bailed out while everyone else struggled finally felt like they were striking back at the system. The rallying cries spread everywhere. It was part investment, part rebellion, part the funniest group project in history. The whole world was watching. And then, the plot twist nobody saw coming. At the height of the frenzy, with regular people winning big, the popular trading apps suddenly turned off the buy button. You could sell GameStop, but you couldn't buy it. The little guy's main weapon was disabled right when they were winning. And that is when everyone lost their minds. People were furious. It looked to a lot of folks like the moment the regular people started winning, the rules suddenly changed to protect the big guys. Now, the trading app said it was due to complicated financial plumbing reasons, rules about how trades get settled. There's real nuance there, but the optics? The optics were a disaster. It felt rigged. The fallout was enormous. There were congressional hearings. The Reddit guy who'd pointed at GameStop early got called to testify. Lawmakers from both political sides, who agree on basically nothing, united in being angry about it. The little forum of meme posters had forced the most powerful people in the country to explain themselves on live TV. So did the little guys actually win? Yes and no. And this is where the story gets real and where the lesson lives. Because what happened next is the part that the rocket emoji excitement often skips over. Let's pull the thread all the way to the end. Here's the honest part. Some people who bought early and sold near the top made life-changing money. Real, genuine fortunes. But a lot of people who joined late, caught up in the hype, bought at the very top, and then watched the stock come crashing back down. They didn't sell in time and they lost money, sometimes a lot of it. The same wave that made some people rich wiped others out. And that's the first big lesson, and it's a real one. A crowd has incredible power, but a crowd can also get swept up in hype. The same energy that let regular people unite and crush a hedge fund also convinced some people to throw their savings at a stock at its peak. Collective power is a double-edged sword. The crowd can lift you up or carry you off a cliff. But here's the second lesson, the bigger, more hopeful one. For one wild moment, a bunch of ordinary people proved that when they organize and act together, they can shake the most powerful institutions on the planet. The experts said the little guy could never matter. The little guy made Wall Street tremble. That part, that was real, and nobody can take it back. So let's talk about what this whole circus actually changed. First, it terrified Wall Street. The big funds suddenly realized that the internet, millions of coordinated, regular people, was a force they could no longer ignore or laugh at. They started monitoring social media like hawks. The little guy went from invisible to a genuine threat overnight. Second, it exposed how the plumbing of the stock market actually works. The boring, behind-the-scenes machinery that nobody thinks about until it suddenly stops you from buying a stock. Millions of people learned for the first time that the game has hidden rules and middlemen they never knew existed. Knowledge spread like wildfire. Third, the funny one. It created a whole new language and culture. Diamond hands, meaning you refuse to sell. To the moon for a soaring stock. Apes, tendies. An entire goofy vocabulary born from a meme forum entered the mainstream and even got quoted in those serious congressional hearings. Lawmakers in suits saying diamond hands. Beautiful. But here's the genuinely serious beat we shouldn't skip. Real people got hurt in this. Some folks, swept up in the excitement and the we're all in this together energy, put in money they couldn't afford to lose, savings, rent money. And when the stock crashed, they lost it. The hype was fun. The consequences, for some, were not. That part deserves to be said plainly, no jokes. Which leads to the most important practical takeaway of the whole saga, and it's free money advice that's actually good. Never invest money you can't afford to lose, and never buy something just because everyone online is screaming about it. By the time the whole internet is yelling buy, the smart money is often already selling. Hype is not a strategy. Now back to the fun, because the legacy here is genuinely wild. GameStop, the company, the actual dying mall store, got a second life out of this. All that attention and all that money let it raise funds, pay off debt, and reinvent itself. A company everyone had written off got saved by a meme. The internet didn't just shake Wall Street, it accidentally rescued a business. And it kept happening. After GameStop, the internet army went looking for other heavily shorted stocks to squeeze, other forgotten companies, even a movie theater chain. Some worked, some flopped. Meme stocks became a permanent new category. The genie was out of the bottle. Regular people had discovered they could move markets just by agreeing to all push in the same direction. There's a deeper lesson hiding in here about power. For a long time, the stock market felt like a private club for the rich and the connected. GameStop showed that the internet had quietly handed ordinary people a new kind of power. The power to coordinate at massive scale instantly for free. That power can be used foolishly, or it can genuinely change who gets a seat at the table. And here's the sweet, hopeful part. For all the chaos and the people who got burned, millions of folks who'd never thought about investing suddenly got curious. They started learning how markets actually work, how shorting works, how the system is built. A meme stock accidentally became the biggest financial education event in history. People got smarter, even the ones who lost. So the real lesson, the heart of the whole thing, is a balance. Ordinary people working together have real power, more than they ever realized. That's genuinely inspiring. But power without discipline is dangerous. The same crowd energy that topples giants can also stampede people off a cliff. The trick is to harness the power and keep your head. Be bold, but don't be reckless. And this isn't ancient history. It changed things permanently. Today, hedge funds genuinely monitor social media. Regulators looked hard at that buy button moment. Trading apps had to answer for it. And every so often, the internet still flexes this muscle, reminding Wall Street that the crowd is always watching now. The balance of power shifted, just a little, but it shifted. Which reveals the real twist of the whole story. The most powerful force in modern markets might not be money or insider connections anymore. It might just be attention. Millions of regular people all looking at the same thing at the same time. Wall Street spent a century mastering money. They never saw the meme coming. So here's the domino effect of the GameStop saga. Hedge funds overshort a dying store. The internet spots the trap, millions buy together. Short squeeze, hedge funds lose billions, the buy button gets pulled, outrage, congressional hearings, a permanent shift in who has power in the market, one Reddit forum, one dying store, a whole system shaken. Compare that to the old world where this was simply impossible. Before the internet, regular people couldn't find each other, couldn't coordinate, couldn't move as one. Wall Street's power came partly from the little guy being scattered and alone. The internet erased that. It turned a million tiny voices into one very loud, very rich roar. That's the change that mattered most. Now, was it a clean, happy ending? No. Real markets are messy. Some hedge funds recovered. Some regular people lost money. The revolution didn't overthrow Wall Street. The rich are still very much rich. But the story still matters, because it permanently proved something people had forgotten. The system isn't as untouchable as it looks, and that knowledge changes everything going forward. Picture our hero, one tiny GameStop share, showing up to history class and everyone goes, wait, you? The 80 cents for a used game store? You nearly broke Wall Street and ended up in Congress? And the little share just shrugs and goes, the internet believed in me. The most unlikely main character in financial history. And here's the kicker, it'll happen again. The internet now knows it has this power, and it won't forget. Every few months, the crowd tests its strength somewhere new. The specific stock doesn't matter. The lesson Wall Street learned is permanent. Never again assume the little guy is asleep. The crowd has tasted its own power, and there's no untasting that. So the tools change, the stocks change, but the truth the GameStop saga revealed doesn't. Ordinary people, connected and coordinated, are a genuine force in the world now, for better and for worse. It can be used to lift the little guy up, or to stampede people into bad decisions. The power is real. What we do with it is the part still being written. And that's the brain melter. The thing that shook the richest institutions on Earth wasn't a richer institution. It was a bunch of bored, broke, ordinary people with phones, a meme, and the radical idea that they were stronger together than apart. The mighty weren't beaten by something mightier. They were beaten by the many. That's never going away. Meanwhile, the next time you see the whole internet screaming about some stock, some coin, some sure thing, you'll remember GameStop. You'll know the power of the crowd is real, and you'll also know to keep your head, do your own thinking, and never bet the rent money. You get to be inspired and smart. That's the whole point. And here's the genuinely useful takeaway. No jokes. The GameStop saga is proof of something that goes way beyond stocks. You are not as powerless as the world wants you to feel. Alone, the little guy gets ignored. Together, the little guys shook the planet. Whatever you're up against, find your people, organize, act with discipline, and don't underestimate what ordinary folks can do when they stop competing and start cooperating. That's the real superpower. So let's bring it home. A dying video game store, a forum full of memers, and the most reckless bet on Wall Street collided to create the greatest underdog money story of our time. Regular people made the untouchable tremble. Some got rich, some got burned, and the world learned that the crowd is a force nobody can ignore anymore. All of it, completely real. It took a forgotten company, a flawed bet, and a million ordinary people deciding to act as one to shake Wall Street to its core. And the wildest part is that the most powerful weapon in the whole story wasn't money. It was a bunch of broke people who simply refused to keep being ignored. History doesn't only turn on armies and kings. Sometimes it turns on a meme. And the real takeaway? Two things at once. One, never underestimate what ordinary people can do when they unite. You have more power than you think. 2, never let hype switch off your brain. Power without discipline is how good people make terrible decisions. Hold both, and you've learned the real lesson of GameStop. Be the crowd that lifts, not the crowd that stampedes. So next time someone tells you the little guy can't make a difference, that the system's too big, that you're just one person, remember the dying mall store, the meme forum, and the week the internet made Wall Street blink. One person is a whisper, a million people are a roar, and the world has never been better at turning whispers into roars. And that's what If Regular People Beat Wall Street, a true story about power, hype, memes, and the day the underdogs bit back. If this fired you up, smash subscribe, because next week we pull another thread and break history all over again. I'll see you in the next one. What if?